What would you do if your quiet life as a single father suddenly exploded into chaos when two alien children crash-landed in your backyard? Marcus Chin thought his biggest challenge was raising his 8-year-old son Tommy alone after his wife's death. He worked double shifts at the auto repair shop, struggled with homework help, and counted every penny just to keep their small apartment. But on a stormy Tuesday night, everything changed when a silver pod smashed through his fence, revealing two terrified alien girls with eyes that held intelligence far beyond their apparent age. What Marcus didn't know was that these weren't just any alien children. They were the last survivors of an ancient race whose technology could revolutionize human civilization or destroy it completely. Now Marcus faces an impossible choice: turn them over to the authorities and watch them disappear into government labs, or protect them and risk everything he's built for his son. What he discovers about these girls, about himself, and about what it truly means to be human will challenge everything he thought he knew about family, sacrifice, and the bonds that tie different species together across the vast emptiness of space. This is a story about second chances, unexpected family, and how sometimes the most ordinary people become extraordinary heroes not through strength or weapons, but through simple acts of kindness that echo across the galaxy. Marcus Chin wiped the grease from his hands with a torn shop rag, glancing at the clock on the garage wall. 7:30. Tommy would be wondering where dinner was, probably doing his math homework wrong again, and Marcus still had 2 more cars to finish before he could call it a day. The rain hammered against the metal roof of Chin's auto repair like bullets, making conversation with customers nearly impossible. "Mr. Chun," a voice called from the office door. Marcus looked up to see Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman whose ancient Honda he'd been nursing back to health for the past 3 days. "I can come back tomorrow if you need more time." Marcus shook his head, forcing a tired smile. "No, ma'am, just tightening a few more bolts. She'll purr like a kitten when I'm done." He grabbed his wrench set and ducked back under the hood. The truth was, Mrs. Patterson's car needed a new transmission, but she lived on Social Security and couldn't afford it. Marcus had been quietly replacing worn parts with salvaged ones from the junkyard, making the old transmission work just a little longer. 20 minutes later, Mrs. Patterson drove away with tears in her eyes, pressing a plate of homemade cookies into Marcus's hands despite his protests. These were the moments that made the 60-hour weeks worth it. Not the money, there was never enough of that, but the knowledge that he was helping people who reminded him of his own grandmother, people who just needed someone to care. Marcus locked up the shop and jogged through the rain to his beat-up pickup truck. The engine coughed twice before turning over, a sound that reminded him he needed to practice what he preached and fix his own vehicle. But there were always more pressing needs. Tommy needed new shoes. The apartment rent was due in 3 days. The electricity bill sat unopened on his kitchen table because he wasn't ready to see how bad it was. The drive home took 15 minutes through the winding streets of Millbrook, a small town that had seen better days. Empty storefronts lined Main Street like missing teeth, casualties of the big box stores that had sprouted up 30 miles away. But the town still had character, still had people who waved at each other and actually meant it. It was the kind of place where Marcus could raise Tommy without worrying about gangs or drugs or the 1,000 dangers that plagued bigger cities. Marcus pulled into the driveway of their duplex, noting that old Mr. Kowalski next door had fixed his porch light. The man was 82 and still climbed ladders, which both impressed and terrified Marcus. He grabbed his toolbox and the cookies, then jogged to the front door, fishing for his keys in the rain. "Dad," Tommy's voice called from inside as soon as Marcus's key hit the lock. "You're late. I finished my homework and started dinner, and I think I burned the mac and cheese a little, but it's still good." Marcus smiled as he stepped inside, hanging his rain-soaked jacket on the hook by the door. The apartment was small, just 2 bedrooms, a living room that doubled as Tommy's play area, and a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people. But Tommy had made it warm with his drawings taped to the refrigerator, his books scattered across the coffee table, and his endless 8-year-old energy filling every corner. "Let me see this gourmet meal," Marcus said, ruffling Tommy's dark hair. The boy beamed up at him, saw stains on his school shirt, and pride written across his face. The mac and cheese was indeed burned around the edges. But Marcus ate every bite while Tommy chattered about his day at school, about the kickball game at recess, about how Sarah Martinez had brought a lizard for show and tell, and it had escaped during math class. Mrs. Johnson says we're going to study space next week, Tommy said, twirling orange noodles around his fork. Did you know that there might be aliens out there, Dad? Like real ones. Mrs. Johnson says the universe is so big that there has to be other life somewhere. Marcus nodded, only half listening as he mentally calculated whether they had enough money for groceries this week. That's really interesting, buddy. What kind of aliens do you think are out there? Friendly ones, Tommy said without hesitation. Like in the movies where they come to Earth and become friends with humans. Not the scary ones that want to hurt people. I think aliens would be nice because they'd be smart enough to travel between stars, so they'd be smart enough to know that fighting is dumb. The simple logic of an 8-year-old. Marcus wished the world worked that way, where intelligence automatically meant kindness, where being smart meant choosing peace. He'd learned the hard way that some of the most intelligent people he'd met were also the cruelest, and some of the kindest had never graduated high school. After dinner, they tackled Tommy's homework together at the kitchen table. Marcus's own education had stopped at high school when Sarah got pregnant, but he'd learned enough from fixing things to help with basic math and reading. Tonight was long division, which Marcus remembered just well enough to guide Tommy through the steps. Dad, why do we have to learn this stuff? Tommy asked, erasing his third mistake on the same problem. When am I ever going to need to divide 847 by 23 in real life? Marcus thought about it while Tommy worked. Well, what if you wanted to figure out how many people could ride in 23 cars if you had 847 people who needed rides? Tommy's eyes lit up. Like if aliens landed and needed transportation? Sure, Marcus laughed. Exactly like that. You'd need to know how many aliens could fit in each car, and whether you'd need more cars or if some aliens would have to wait for the next trip. The math suddenly made sense when it involved aliens. Tommy worked through the rest of the problems with new enthusiasm, creating elaborate scenarios for each division problem involving alien visitors, space travel, and interplanetary diplomacy. Marcus made mental notes to encourage this creativity, maybe pick up some library books about space for Tommy to read. By 9 o'clock, Tommy was in his pajamas, teeth brushed, and settled in bed with his favorite stuffed dinosaur. Marcus sat on the edge of the narrow bed, the same routine they'd followed every night since Sarah died 2 years ago. First, they talked about the best part of Tommy's day. Tonight, it was successfully trading his apple slices for Jeremy's cookies at lunch. Then, they talked about tomorrow's plans. Tommy had art class, which was his favorite, and Marcus promised to pick up supplies for a school project about solar systems. Dad, Tommy's voice was getting sleepy. Do you ever miss Mom at night? Like, when it's quiet? Marcus's chest tightened. They'd had this conversation before, but it never got easier. Every night, buddy. But you know what I realized? Mom loved us both so much that even though she can't be here, that love is still here. It's in the way you're kind to people, and the way you make me laugh, and the way you try so hard at everything you do. Tommy nodded seriously. I think she liked the aliens we talked about. The friendly ones. I think she would too. Marcus kissed Tommy's forehead and turned on the small nightlight shaped like a rocket ship. Sweet dreams, kiddo. See you in the morning. Marcus settled in the living room with a beer and the bills he'd been avoiding. The electricity bill was worse than expected, but not catastrophic. The rent could wait 3 more days. Tommy's shoes could wait a week, maybe 2 if Marcus reinforced the soles with duct tape. It was a delicate balance, this life of calculated risks and hopeful delays, but they were managing. Barely, but managing. The rain was still coming down hard when Marcus finally decided to call it a night. He checked the locks, turned off the lights, and was heading toward his bedroom when the night exploded in silver light. Not lightning. This was different, too bright, and too close, and moving too fast across the sky. Marcus pressed his face to the living room window and watched what looked like a meteor streak overhead, so low he could see details of its surface. Then it crashed. The impact shook the house, rattled the windows, and set off every car alarm in a 3-block radius. Marcus felt it in his bones, a deep thrumming that seemed to come from the earth itself. He grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and threw on his jacket, then paused at Tommy's bedroom door. The boy was sitting up in bed, rubbing his eyes. "Dad, what was that noise?" "Probably just thunder, buddy. Go back to sleep. I'm going to check outside for a minute." Marcus slipped out the back door and immediately realized the crash had been much closer than he'd thought. His back fence was gone, replaced by a smoking crater that stretched into the empty lot behind their duplex. The air smelled of ozone and hot metal, and steam rose from the rain hitting whatever had fallen from the sky. He approached carefully, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, and steam. In the center of the crater sat what could only be described as a pod, about the size of a small car, but shaped like a smooth silver egg. Its surface was perfectly seamless except for what looked like windows near the top, though they were too dark to see through. Marcus knew he should call someone. The police, the fire department, maybe the military. This was clearly not a normal meteor, not a weather balloon, not anything that belonged in his quiet backyard. But something held him back, maybe curiosity, maybe the memory of Tommy's innocent faith in friendly aliens, maybe just the inherent stubbornness that had gotten him through the last 2 years of single parenthood. As he watched, a seam appeared in the pod's surface, running down its side like a crack in an eggshell. Light spilled out, soft and blue-white, nothing like the harsh streetlights Marcus was used to. The crack widened, and Marcus realized he was looking at some kind of door or hatch. What emerged made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. 2 small figures stumbled out of the pod, moving with the uncertain steps of someone who'd been sitting too long in a cramped space. They were clearly children, though unlike any children Marcus had ever seen. Their skin had a faint luminescent quality, almost pearl-like in the strange light, and their hair fell in waves that seemed to move independently of the wind. But it was their eyes that stopped Marcus cold, large, expressive, and undeniably intelligent, holding depths that seemed far too old for their apparent age. They looked around the crater with obvious confusion and fear, speaking to each other in a language that sounded like music mixed with mathematics. One of them pointed at Marcus, and both children froze, staring at him with wide eyes that reflected his flashlight beam like a cat's. For a long moment, nobody moved. Marcus stood at the edge of the crater, flashlight in hand, trying to process what he was seeing. The children clung to each other, and Marcus could see they were trembling, though whether from cold or fear he couldn't tell. They were wearing clothes that looked almost normal, simple tunics and leggings, but made from materials that seemed to shift color in the light. The silence stretched until one of the children took a tentative step forward. She was slightly taller than her companion, with the same otherworldly features, but an expression that held less fear and more determination. She raised one small hand and spoke a single word in her musical language, then tried again in what Marcus recognized as broken English. "Help." The word hit Marcus like a physical blow. Here were 2 children, alone and afraid, asking for help in the universal language of need. It didn't matter that they weren't human, didn't matter that their presence in his backyard would complicate his already difficult life in ways he couldn't even imagine. They were children, they were scared, and they needed help. Marcus slowly crouched down, making himself smaller and less threatening. He set the flashlight on the ground, pointing away from them, and spoke in the softest voice he could manage. "It's okay. I won't hurt you. Are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" The children looked at each other, having a rapid conversation in their own language. The one who had spoken before turned back to Marcus and nodded slowly. "Not hurt, but cold. Scared. Ship broken." She gestured toward the pod, which Marcus now noticed was smoking more heavily and making small clicking sounds like cooling metal. Marcus glanced back toward his house, where a light had come on in Tommy's bedroom window. His son was probably awake, maybe looking out the window, definitely wondering what was happening. In a few minutes, other neighbors would start investigating the noise and the light. Soon there would be police cars and government officials and a media circus that would destroy any chance these children had of staying safe. The decision made itself. "Come with me," Marcus said, standing slowly and extending his hand. "I have a warm house and food. You'll be safe there while we figure out what to do next." The girls looked at each other again, and Marcus could see them weighing their options. trust the strange human who had found them, or stay in the crater with their broken ship and hope for better options. It wasn't really a choice at all. The taller girl took Marcus's hand first, her skin warm and surprisingly human feeling despite its strange luminescent quality. The second girl followed, and together they climbed out of the crater. As they reached level ground, Marcus got a better look at them in the scattered light from the house. They were definitely sisters, maybe even twins, with the same bone structure and the same otherworldly grace. But there were subtle differences. The taller one had hair that seemed to have silver threads running through it, while the shorter one's hair was pure black with hints of deep blue. Their eyes were the same pale green, but the taller girl's held more wariness while her sisters showed more curiosity. "What are your names?" Marcus asked as they walked toward the house. "I am Kira," the taller girl said carefully. "This is my sister Zara. We are grateful for your kindness, human Marcus." Marcus stopped walking. "How do you know my name?" Kira's eyes widened, and she exchanged a quick glance with her sister. We learn languages quickly. Your son called your name earlier, when you came home. We heard through the ship's sensors." It was a reasonable explanation, though something in her tone suggested there was more to it. Marcus filed the question away for later and focused on the immediate problem of getting two alien children into his house without causing a panic. "Listen," he said, stopping at his back door. "My son is inside. He's 8 years old, and he's going to be very excited to meet you. He's been talking about aliens all evening, actually. But I need you to understand that we have to be very careful about who knows you're here. There are people who might want to hurt you or study you or separate you from each other." Both girls nodded solemnly, and Marcus realized they understood far more about their situation than their apparent age might suggest. "We will be careful," Kira said. "We have experience with dangerous situations." Marcus wondered what kind of experiences alien children could have that would teach them about danger, but that was another question for later. Right now, he had to focus on getting them inside and warm and fed, and then figuring out what to do next. He opened the back door and led them into the kitchen, where the familiar smells of their dinner and the soft lighting made everything seem normal again. For about 10 seconds, "Dad," Tommy's voice called from the hallway. "I heard voices. Is everything okay?" Marcus looked at Kira and Zara, seeing his own nervousness reflected in their faces. Then, Tommy appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing his dinosaur pajamas and rubbing sleep from his eyes. He took one look at the two girls standing in their glowing clothes with their impossible eyes and their otherworldly hair, and his face lit up like Christmas morning. "Oh my gosh," Tommy breathed. "Dad, you found aliens. You actually found real aliens, and they're kids just like me." The next hour passed in a blur of revelations that challenged everything Marcus thought he knew about the universe. They sat around the kitchen table, the same table where Tommy had struggled with long division just hours earlier, while Kira and Zara slowly revealed pieces of their story between sips of hot chocolate and bites of Mrs. Patterson's cookies. The girls were from a world called Ethros, located in what humans knew as the Vega system. Their people, the Ethrani, had been explorers and peacekeepers for thousands of years, traveling between star systems to help younger civilizations develop and defend themselves against more aggressive species. But 3 months ago, their homeworld had been attacked by something they called the Void Seekers, a nomadic race that consumed the life force of entire planets. "Our parents sent us away when the attacks began," Kira explained, her young voice carrying a weight that made Marcus's heart ache. "They said we were too important to risk, that we carried something the Void Seekers could never be allowed to find." "What kind of something?" Tommy asked with the direct curiosity of childhood. He had accepted the girl's presence with the adaptability that only 8-year-olds possessed, more fascinated than frightened by their glowing skin and musical voices. Kira and Zara exchanged one of their meaningful looks, and Marcus noticed they did this frequently, as if they were having entire conversations he couldn't hear. Finally, Zara spoke up. "We carry the memories of our people. Not just our own memories, but the collected knowledge and experiences of our entire civilization. When we grow older, we will be able to access all of it. Every scientific discovery, every work of art, every lesson learned across thousands of years of exploration." Marcus felt his engineering mind trying to process this information. Like a biological hard drive? More than that, Kira said. Your hard drives store data. We store understanding, emotion, wisdom. When I access my great-grandmother's memories, I don't just know what she learned. I feel what she felt when she learned it. I understand not just the facts, but why they mattered. That's amazing, Tommy breathed. So you're like living libraries. Zara smiled at this description, the first genuine joy Marcus had seen from either girl. I like that phrase. Living libraries. Yes, Tommy, that is exactly what we are. Marcus poured himself another cup of coffee, his mind racing through the implications. If these children carried the entire knowledge base of an advanced civilization, they represented an incredible opportunity for human advancement. They could help solve climate change, cure diseases, maybe even develop faster than light travel. But they also represented an incredible danger. If the wrong people got hold of them, if governments decided to study them or use them as weapons. The people who attacked your world, Marcus said carefully. Are they still looking for you? Kira's expression grew serious. Yes, the Void Seekers can track our life signatures across great distances, but it takes time. We estimate we have perhaps 6 of your months before they locate this planet. Maybe less. 6 months, Marcus repeated, the coffee turning bitter in his mouth. And then, what happens? Then, they will come here, Zara said simply. They will drain this world's life force and move on to the next one. Unless what? Unless we can find a way to stop them. Our parents believe that combining Ethrani knowledge with human innovation might create something powerful enough to defeat the Void Seekers. Humans are unique in the galaxy. You solve problems in ways no other species considers. You adapt and improvise and refuse to give up even when logic says you should. Tommy was hanging on every word, his eyes wide with excitement. So we're going to save the galaxy. Marcus wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, but the serious expressions on the girls' faces stopped him. That's quite a responsibility to put on a species that still can't agree on whether climate change is real. Climate change is very real, Kira said matter-of-factly. Your planet's atmospheric carbon levels have increased by 47% in the last century and a half. But you're also developing renewable energy technologies at an exponential rate that our projections indicate will stabilize the situation within 30 to 50 years, assuming political cooperation increases. Marcus stared at her. How do you know all that? We've been monitoring your world's broadcast for the last 3 months of our journey. Television, radio, internet communications. Our ship's computers analyzed everything and taught us your languages, your customs, your history. We probably know more about current human civilization than most humans do. This raised uncomfortable questions about privacy and surveillance, but Marcus pushed them aside for the moment. So you chose Earth specifically? We chose you specifically, Zara said, looking directly at him. Our computers identified several thousand humans who possessed the combination of technical knowledge, moral integrity, and family stability that made them suitable for contact. But you ranked highest on all our criteria. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. Me? I fix cars for a living. I barely finished high school. I'm raising my son on hamburger helper and prayer. What could your computers possibly see in me that rank me highest for anything? Kira's eyes softened. You spent 3 days rebuilding an elderly woman's transmission using salvaged parts so she could afford to keep her car. You worked 60 hours a week to support your son while teaching him kindness and curiosity instead of bitterness. When your neighbor's water heater failed last winter, you fixed it for free even though you needed the money for your own bills. When Tommy asked about aliens tonight, you didn't dismiss his imagination, you encouraged it. Our computers can analyze technical specifications and financial records, Zara added. But they can also analyze patterns of behavior, emotional responses, moral choices made when no one is watching. You are exactly the kind of human our parents hoped we would find. Marcus felt overwhelmed by their faith in him. I don't know if I can live up to those expectations. You already have, Kira said simply. Tommy, who had been listening to this exchange with growing excitement, suddenly jumped up from his chair. This is so cool. Wait until I tell Jeremy and Sarah and Tommy no. Marcus's sharp tone stopped his son mid-sentence. You can't tell anyone about Kira and Zara. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Tommy's face fell. But, Dad, this is the most amazing thing that's ever happened. Why can't I tell my friends? Marcus looked at the alien girls, seeing his own concern reflected in their faces. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that the world is full of people who would exploit children, especially children with knowledge that could change civilization or destroy it? Tommy, Kira said gently, what would happen if the wrong people found out about us? People who wanted to use our knowledge to hurt others, or to make weapons. Tommy's expression grew thoughtful. They would try to take you away from us. Yes, and they would try to force us to share our memories, even the ones that are dangerous. There are things we know that could destroy your world if used incorrectly. Like what? Tommy asked, then immediately looked scared by his own question. Zara spoke carefully. Our people learned to manipulate matter at the molecular level thousands of years ago. In the right hands, this technology could eliminate hunger and disease. In the wrong hands, it could create weapons that would make your nuclear bombs look like firecrackers. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. These children, sitting at his kitchen table in their glowing clothes, carried knowledge that could save or damn the human race. The responsibility was staggering. So we keep it secret, Tommy said with the absolute certainty of childhood. We protect them until they figure out how to stop the bad aliens. It's not that simple, buddy. They need food, clothes that don't glow, documentation if anyone asks questions. They need to learn how to blend in with human society, at least temporarily. Actually, Kira said, our clothes only glow because they're designed for our ship's environment. They can be adjusted. She touched a small device on her wrist, and instantly her tunic shifted to look like ordinary cotton, the ethereal glow fading to normal fabric texture. Zara did the same, and suddenly, they looked like two perfectly normal children, if you ignored their luminescent skin and otherworldly eyes. That helps, Marcus said. But we still need to figure out housing, documentation, school enrollment if they're going to be here for months. School. Zara's eyes lit up. We could attend school with Tommy? You want to go to school? Marcus asked, surprised. We've learned about your educational system from your broadcasts. It seems like an excellent way to observe human social development and learning patterns. Plus, she smiled shyly, we've never had friends our own age. HFY children typically don't socialize until they reach their first knowledge awakening at what you would consider 16 years old. Marcus tried to imagine these alien children, carriers of cosmic knowledge, sitting through third-grade math lessons. The absurdity of it made his head spin. We could tell people they're my cousins, Tommy suggested. Like, distant cousins who came to live with us because their parents died or something. The casual way Tommy mentioned dead parents made Marcus wince, but the girls seemed to accept it as a practical necessity. They were already orphans in the truest sense. Their entire world was gone. That could work, Marcus said slowly. I need to create some kind of paper trail, birth certificates, school records. I know a guy who might be able to help with that, someone who helps families in witness protection programs. You know someone in witness protection? Tommy asked, impressed. Danny Rodriguez. I've fixed his car a few times. He works for some kind of federal program that relocates people who are in danger. He never talks about it directly, but I can read between the lines. Kira and Zara looked at each other in that way they had, and Marcus got the distinct impression they were having one of their silent conversations. There is one more thing, Kira said finally. Our ship's destruction has probably already been detected by your government's satellites. By morning, there will likely be investigators looking into the crash site. Marcus felt his stomach drop. How long do we have? Based on your government's typical response times and the remote location, perhaps 8 to 10 hours. But they will find evidence that the crash was not a natural meteor. Marcus looked at the clock on the microwave. It was past midnight. By 10 in the morning, there could be federal agents crawling all over his backyard, asking questions he couldn't answer. We need to clean up the crash site, he said, standing up from the table. Make it look like a normal meteor impact. Remove any obvious alien technology. The ship cannot be moved, Zara said. It is too damaged and too heavy. But we can disguise it. How? Kira smiled, and for the first time Marcus saw a hint of the advanced being she would someday become. HFY ships are designed with this possibility in mind. We can activate the ship's final protocol, which will cause it to mimic the composition and appearance of a natural meteor. To your scientists, it will appear to be made of normal space rock and metal. What about you two? Won't they be able to detect that you're not human? Our biosignatures can be masked for short periods, Zara said. As long as we're not subjected to intensive medical examination, we should appear human to casual observation. Marcus felt some of his panic subsiding. These girls had clearly been trained for this kind of situation. Their parents had prepared them well for life as refugees. Okay, he said, making a mental list. First, we camouflage the ship. Then, we get you two settled in the spare room. Tomorrow, I called Danny about documentation. This weekend, we go shopping for normal clothes and school supplies. What about me? Tommy asked. What's my job? Marcus looked at his son's eager face and felt a surge of pride mixed with worry. Tommy was about to become part of something far bigger and more dangerous than anything an 8-year-old should have to handle. But he was also the kind of kid who would rise to the challenge. Your job is to be their guide to being human children. Teach them how to act in school, how to make friends, how to blend in. And, most importantly, help them remember what it's like to be kids, not just living libraries. The next 2 hours were spent in the backyard, working in the rain and darkness to activate the ship's disguise protocol. Marcus watched in amazement as the smooth silver pod gradually transformed, its surface becoming rough and pitted like natural stone, its exotic metals shifting to look like ordinary iron and nickel. By the time they finished, it looked exactly like what geologists would expect to find from a meteor impact. Back inside, Marcus set up the spare room with 2 sleeping bags and some extra pillows. It wasn't much, but it was warm and dry and safe. As he tucked the girls in, he felt the same protective instincts he'd developed for Tommy extending to these 2 remarkable children. Marcus, Kira said as he turned to leave. Thank you. We know this is difficult for you, taking care of strangers who bring danger to your family. You're not strangers anymore, Marcus said without thinking. And you're not bringing danger, you're being chased by it. There's a difference. As he headed to his own bed, exhausted beyond measure, Marcus reflected on how dramatically his life had changed in just a few hours. This morning, his biggest worry had been Tommy's math homework and the electricity bill. Now he was harboring alien refugees, planning to commit document fraud, and apparently helping to prepare Earth's defense against cosmic invaders. But, as he looked in on Tommy, who was sleeping peacefully with a smile on his face, and then checked on Kira and Zara, who were curled up together like any other frightened children, Marcus realized something important. Despite the danger, despite the impossible responsibility, despite the fact that his quiet life was probably over forever, he felt more purpose than he had since Sarah died. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the parking lot of Millbrook Elementary School, watching through the fence as Tommy, Kira, and Zara played kickball during recess. To any casual observer, they looked like 3 normal children. 2 new sisters who had come to live with the Chun family after a tragic accident, according to the carefully constructed story Danny Rodriguez had helped create. The documentation had been easier to arrange than Marcus had expected. Danny had asked surprisingly few questions when Marcus explained that he needed papers for 2 children whose parents had died in a car accident, children who needed protection from potentially dangerous relatives. It wasn't entirely a lie, Marcus rationalized, just a matter of scale. The dangerous relatives happened to be cosmic invaders. These children needed him. Not just his protection or his help with paperwork, but his guidance, his stability, his ability to show them what human goodness looked like. In taking them in, he wasn't just saving their lives. He was rediscovering what made his own life worth living. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, and Marcus wondered if it was natural weather or more ships coming to Earth. Either way, tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new impossibilities to navigate. But tonight, 3 children were safe and warm under his roof, and sometimes that was enough to change everything. Marcus opened his mouth to explain, to prepare Tommy for the complexity of the situation, to warn him about keeping secrets. But before he could speak, Zara stepped forward with a shy smile and spoke her first words in English. Hello, Tommy. We are very happy to meet you. Your father is very kind, just as you said he would be. Tommy looked confused for a moment. Then, turned to Marcus with wonder in his eyes. "Dad, how did she know I said you were kind?" Marcus looked at Zara, remembering Kira's earlier explanation about learning languages quickly, and realized that whatever these children were, they were far more extraordinary than their appearance suggested. And, somehow, impossibly, they had been listening to his family's dinner conversation from a crashed ship in the backyard. "I think," Marcus said slowly, "we have a lot to talk about."